doing design, pattern, sewing tutorial, sewing inspiration and more. And today we're gonna do an up shoulder dress. I firstly made the dress for my friend's wedding last year and I posted a reel and it became viral. Everyone asked me for the pattern and the tutorial, so here it is. Finally, for fabric, I love to use satin or crepe because they got that nice flow, very beautiful draping effect. So the brownish satin dress that you saw in the intro made from 100% polyester, and the two others made from 100% viscose crepe. Okay, the first step is to print out your pattern. Print only the first page first at 100% scale and use the rectangular scale to make sure that you print correctly. When everything is good, we print out the rest and just line up your sheets of paper edge to edge without overlapping or trimming down. Tape them together and cut the pattern out. Then you lay all of the three pattern pieces on your fabric. The two main body pieces will be cut on bias and the scarf piece will be cut on straight grain. When cutting fabric on bias grain, especially with fluid fabrics, I prefer tracing the pattern onto the fabric before cutting. This way, when I cut, I can simply follow my tracing marks without worrying that the fabric or the pattern will slip away and causing mistakes. After cutting, don't forget to mark all of the notches, the dots, and the pleats. You also need to cut 3 bias strips. To do this, draw parallel lines at 45-degree angle to the fabric edge, then cut them out at the desired length. The cutting is finished. Here is the scarf piece. Gonna set it aside. Also the back piece. We're gonna start with the front piece first. Let's tackle those two burst dots. Draw 2 lines for the dot legs. Match them up and pop a pin in there. Then stitch along those lines. I usually leave a 10 cm thread tail at the end of the dot and then tie a couple of knots. It keeps things neat at the dot tips. Give it a good press. Now onto the shoulder pleats. You're gonna find the numbers and folding directions for the pleats on the pattern. Starting with the number 1. Fold the pleats from right to left. Same for number 2. Now for the number 3, switch it up and fold from left to right. Perfect. Lock everything in place with a basting stitch, then use the stem function to keep everything look sharp. Before we move on to assemble the front and the back piece, let's get those spaghetti ties ready. Grab those 2 longer strips that 3 cm wide, fold them in half lengthwise with the wrong side facing out. Give them a good press, then stitch them up with a 0.5 cm seam allowance. Now you can use a loop turner to turn them right side out, or I will show you how just using a needle. So insert the thread into one end of the strap, make sure that it is secure. Then with the eye of the needle, insert the needle into the casing and feed it all the way through. Then try to pull the fabric into the casing. And here it is. When it comes out, you will have your spaghetti strap. You can leave it like that as a ruler or press it down to have a flat strap. We're going to use a French seam to assemble the front and the back piece together. First, we're gonna put the front piece and the back piece wrong side together. Then match up the notches and pin those 2 side seams together. Now stitch it up straight at a 0.7 cm seam allowance. The next step is crucial. I want you to find back the 2 notches at the waist. This is where the spaghetti ties will be attached. Mark them inside the seam so we don't lose track later. I usually pop in a pin just to be doubly sure. Next, let's trim the seam down to 0.4 cm. This little seam will be tucked neatly inside the final seam later. Press the seam allowance all in one direction. Fold it over. Flatten it out again, making sure that the wrong sides of the fabric are facing outward. Now grab your straps and slide one end into the layers, right at the waist notch. we will make a straight stitch at 0.7 cm seam allowance. This seam will glide over the straps, hiding them within the seams. Give it a good press, and there you have it. Our spaghetti ties are completely tucked into a beautiful clean French seam. As you can see, our off-shoulder neckline has a little bit of stretch since it's a curved line. To stabilize the seam, we're gonna use interfacing tape all around the neckline. We measure the exact neckline on the pattern for the front and the back, then cut out the interfacing tape to match that measurement. After securing everything, we will create the baby round hem for the neckline. To do this, fold the fabric edge towards the wrong side by 1 cm and make a tiny top stitch about 2 or 3 mm from the folded edge. Trim the excess seam allowance as close to the stitching line as possible. Roll the hem up again to the wrong side to create a tiny fold. Now with your rolled hem facing you, stitch another straight line directly on top of the first one. Press it nicely, and there you have it, a beautiful baby round hem. Next up, we will do some preparation for the scarf piece. We will need to create gathers for the top part of the scarf piece to attach it to the shoulder seam. And we will finish the rest of the edge with the baby round hem using the same technique as we used for the neckline. Now let's flip the garment wrong side out. Grab the scarf piece and place it between the front and the back piece, making sure that the wrong side of the scarf piece touches the right side of the back piece. Align 3 layers at the shoulder seam nicely, ensuring that the scarf piece end is 1 cm away from the armhole side, because we will need this part for the armhole finishing later. Okay, stitch straight through all of the 3 layers to secure everything. After that, serge the seam allowance. If you don't have a serger, a zigzag stitch works just fine. And here's how it looks like. Next, we'll use the bias binding method to finish up the armhole edge. Grab the last bias strip, so this is our binding, with the right sides facing each other. Align the edge to the armhole and stitch with a 0.5 cm seam allowance. I prefer avoiding starting at the shoulder seam or the side seams to prevent too many ends in one place, making it so bulky. When you reach the end, overlap the 2 short ends of the bias binding to form a square like this. Now stitch across the diagonal of the square and trim the excess fabric. That is how we close the loop. Wrap the binding over the seam allowance, and with the right side facing up, understitch the seam allowance to the binding. And trim the excess seam allowance as close to the stitching line as possible. Now fold the binding to the inside of the dress and top stitch at 0.5 cm all around the armhole. There you go, the armhole now has a clean binding finish. Our dress is almost finished. There's only one thing left to do, it is the hemming. And once again, I'm gonna go for a baby round hem because I just love that clean look. I followed the same process as when we did with the neckline and the scarf piece. And when you're done with the hem, the dress is completely done. The assembly process is pretty straightforward, so I really hope you give it a shot. And don't forget to tag me at Lizzie pattern because I would love to see your versions. If you like this video, feel free to give me a thumbs up because it's the easiest way to support your favorite creator for free. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye!